been a while since we just focused on one silo. It was a little funny inside. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. A lot of moving parts, all within our main silo. It's episode 6 called Barricade. We pick up right after the end of the last episode where Shirley and Knox have made their way down to mechanical level and by swinging off. And Knox got banged up, got a little hurt, and so they're patching him up, trying to figure out what's going to happen next. They get word that deliveries are no longer being allowed through from one level to the next. So food's not being allowed in. Also, they have a leak somewhere down there because the food that is there is being poisoned. And so Bernard, who's watching them in real time, is sort of saying, hey, 9 days is sort of what it takes for a functioning society to fall under the weight of starvation. Chaos ensues after the day 9. So he's essentially trying to starve out these folks and make them sort of come into submission or give up both Knox and Shirley. Shirley and Knox are with Walker, getting patched up. After the patch up, Knox takes Shirley to the men that he went to go a few episodes ago, who he specifically asked, the mechanicals, who he specifically asked for 2 favors. One, if anybody comes asking for weapons, don't make them some. And we didn't get to see what the second offer or thing was, but I was right on what it was, I guessed, and I was correct. It's basically, hold all those weapons for us. We need you to keep them all for us. And so they're now coming to cash in and sort of gear up as the next phase of what it is that they have to do gets into play. The Silo's doctor, Shadow, goes to go work on Kennedy, and he is young and not probably the best person to go do this. Kennedy keeps saying, like, no, this ain't it. Shadows apparently in this world can get access to the good drugs that sort of numb folks for these surgeries and these things. But yeah, they don't want to Kennedy doesn't want to let the Shadow do the operation on them. So he's like, no, go give me a honest and true doctor. I know there's someone out there. And Billings' wife sort of remembers meeting Dr. Nichols. So she goes to find him, brings him down. She has to lie to get him past the barricade, basically saying that it's an emergency. If you don't let him through, you're violating a piece of the pact by not allowing us to perform healthcare. And she invokes that there's a pregnant woman who may have to have a C-section. He's the only doctor in the silo that can do it. We got to get on the other side. This raider, who was doing his job correctly, eventually acquiesced and let them pass. So they make their way down to Kennedy. Hank really is questioning whether Billings plans to actually arrest Knox and Shirley. She's like, I know them. They're not the type of people to do what it is that they are believed to have been or accused of. And Billings says, if they are as honorable as you say they are, they're going to turn themselves in, like, and everything. We can then have an honest look into what actually happened with Judge Meadows. Down on Mechanical, the folks of Mechanical are starting to turn on each other. The food rations are starting to have their way with them. And Shirley and Knox are sort of having a conversation with them, but some folks don't want to hear it. There are people who are like, look, I'm perfectly fine. I can starve out, I can be fine, but if the food gets to the point where my kids aren't eating, then we have a problem. Then we might have to start giving you guys up. And Walker gets up to give a pretty solid rah-rah speech, like, hold on, wait. We're not just going to throw each other a bus. This is what they want of us. This is what they're asking of us. Let's not be so quick and hasty to just end this all. Because what's going to happen is if we do that, then we go back to sort of the status quo. Bernard comes and passes on his head. It's like, thanks, guys. Now go back to work. And everything sort of just resets and goes back to what us being ignorant to everything. And I don't think anybody here wants that. They then get a note or a cart with food from that came down the chute way from 122 from allies who was like, hey, here's some food. As a token of saying, thanks for keeping the lights on down there in Mechanical. We appreciate you. And so food's made their way down. That news gets up to Amason and Bernard to say that, hey, allies are starting to send food down the chutes. What do you want to do? And Bernard's like, I was prepared for this. Like this, I knew this was going to occur. Put raiders at every chute, and let's continue to wait and starve them out. The food will run out soon enough. Billings and Hank show up to Walker and want some questions. And Walker's like, cool, I'll answer whatever question you have, but I'm not doing so until somebody tells me what the hell is happening with McLean, because it's sort of just gone radio silence. And she just shuts the door on them. They're like, okay, well, I guess we need to go find out what the hell happened to McLean. Bernard meets with Camille and calls her out on her BS about hearing that she took the two fugitives, hid them, put them in sort of that back alley, and that she was responsible for this. And Camille's like, I did do some of those things. I did do that, but I was there and waiting for someone to come meet them to actually take them up, and no one ever did. So I was acting on behalf of the rules that says, hey, we're going to let the people of the society decide what happens, and no one did. So not really on me. Bernard's like, cool, I know you're full of it, but you're the wife of the judge, so there's nothing that I can do to you at the moment. Almason learns and finds out that the folks in Mechanical are making their way up with weapons. The Barricade is starting to see people with like shields and gear on, and like, okay, it's about to get real down there. So we start sending down folks with weapons, like get the guns down there. We got to get them down there. One of the spies in the control room goes to talk to Sims, who he still is in connection with and who he still believes in. Sims learns that while Almason is aware, and Bernard is aware that the folks are coming up with weapons, they're not aware is that some folks have seen folks on 135 going in the opposite direction with weapons and a saw which can cut through cement, which means that these folks are coming up through the ceiling. So that immediately gives Sims the cause for Paul. He goes to go talk to Bernard immediately. Bernard doesn't answer. He busts down Bernard's door and finds Leon Kennedy there. He's like, well, what the hell are you doing here? And you're supposed to be in the mines. And he's like, I'm doing something for Bernard. He's like, well, where is he? He says, I don't know. He goes storming off. He then finds Camille, his wife, and has a conversation and lets him know the lay of the land. Like, look, the mayor doesn't know, Almason doesn't know, but this is what's happening. There are two different teams going, and they're coming up through the ground. And Camille's kind of like, well, look, people gonna learn today, okay? Like some people have to learn on their own mistakes. Like it's not up to us. And Tim's like, well, what if what they don't know can harm us? And so Camille's like, well, there's nothing you can really do. You're the judge. It's like, I can't do anything. I know that, but you are the former raider. So it's at that point that she gets the ear of the raiders, has a conversation, and sort of comes up with a plan to get that information to them so they can sort of be better prepared. Back with Kennedy, Dr. Nichols goes and gets the bullet out of Kennedy's chest and cleans up and is heading out. At that point, the Billings is like, well, cool, now that your bullet's out, the quid pro quo, the plan was, you now tell me what you know. And he starts feigning ignorance, like, nah, I'm not going to do that. At that point, the Billings tells everybody to get out. Everybody, all y'all leave. Everybody get out. It's just going to be me and him talking. He chats with him and he threatens him, like, look, if you don't tell me what you know, I'm going to call Judge Sims. And yes, he is judge now. And he will put you in a hole so deep that you will never come out of. So Kennedy starts talking and he tells him what Jules and he did about putting the 10-second feed on all computers here in the silo. He tells him of how Sims set him up and said that, hey, if he can get me a drug that will wipe my memory for the last 22 years, if I just go ahead and firebomb. I didn't realize that I was going to take a bullet. None of this was part of the plan, but that was the way that I was going to go. And Billings is like, got it. Kenny tells him, like, well, don't you wish that I didn't tell you that now? Billings is very much he's a straight arrow. He's not joining sides, but he's very much a lawman. For him, it's always about the law. Whether if it's broken, then we need to figure out why it was broken and who's the one that did it. Camille, with Almason, puts her raiders into motion while Shirley and Knox make their move. They pull down the barricade and start making their way up the silo. They get up a few levels. think they're on 125, so they make it up like about 4 or 5 levels to 120. And the Raiders back up, and then they sort of they're surrounded at gunpoint. And it's still way more mechanical folks than there are Raiders. And so Knox says, "Look, you might kill 10 of us, but we're going to kill all of y'all. So make your decision." And they sort of become at a stalemate. To which Shirley suggested, like, "Look, how about this? Since we're here where we're at, let's make this the new barrier." And Amundsen's like, "Okay, we will do that." And he takes that note back to Bernard, who quickly reminds Amundsen that level 122, what's on that? And he's like, "It's the farm." So the people that we were trying to starve out now have a endless supply of food because we just gave them the level with it. Cool. And Joe's a pretty good plan on Shirley's behalf to say, "Look, we don't have to make it all the way up, but let's just get further enough that we didn't have a sustenance supply that we can sort of count on." Now, imagine if somebody in their ranks was poisoning the rat, like poisoning the food with rat poisoning, I imagine they're going to get to the crops as well. But at least in the now, it seems like they got sort of a leg up, and Bernard took a big L in this. Billings goes back to Walker and says, "Look, I do know a little bit about my plan. They did arrest her that day in the cafe, but she normally, if somebody's arrested, they would come to me. And if they didn't, that means they have her in seclusion somewhere. I can do some digging around to see if I can find her, but the only way that I can really get her out of seclusion is if I'm able to clear her name. And to do that, I need to know what happened behind those doors with Shirley and Knox." And so Walker tells him. He then goes to see Shirley and Knox based on the information that he got from Walker, and he so much as asks. Meanwhile, they're sucking face. They're now into each other and making out and all that stuff. But he interrupts them, and he says, "Look, I just talked to Walker, and she says that you said that Meadows was dead before you came in there." And both Bernard and Rob were there. "Would you swear on a pact that is the truth?" And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely." He's like, "Okay, cool." Then Billings calls the mayor, is like, "I found their two fugitives." And Bernard's like, "Bet, say less. Cool. Where they at?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to tell you that at this time. What I do want is that I want an investigation opened into the death of Judge Meadows." And you can tell quickly that Bernard's like, "Kill the comms," because they're not the only ones. They're not just talking directly to each other. It's an open channel, so everybody, radios, people can chime in. They can hear this. So he is hearing that in real time. The sheriff has turned on on the mayor, and he just sees so much that says like, "F, I just lost the sheriff," which is a big deal in the silo. And to that point, then Knox says, "Thank you," and Billings like, why are you thanking me? Like, I don't stand with you, or I don't stand with the mayor. I don't stand with the judge. I stand for the law." It's like Judge Dredd in this piece. I am the law. He says, I'm here for the law," and like that's how straight of an arrow he is. There is no um, right or wrong. There just is. Like, this is how this is supposed to be. So he is very much the company man, but not for the company that Bernard and Sims has sort of turned this into. He goes to go talk to his wife, and his wife is very much like, "I'm proud of you. You did the right thing." And then sort of clocks that he hasn't taken his meds in a while and seems to be as surefire and steady as he has ever been without taking them, which says a lot about who he is becoming as a man in this world right now. Bernard and Lucas hit an impasse at decoding the hard drive, and there is a level of security that Lucas is not privy to and will never be privy to get the next piece that he needs to decipher. And the only way that he can do that, Bernard makes him his shadow, so that then he can give him access and give him the things that he needs to do so. So he quickly finds a pact and swears him in as his next shadow, which you and I both know that Sims is going to absolutely love that. That's going to go over well at all. Dr. Nichols goes to go see Walker, and he has not seen her since he dropped off Jules all those years ago, but he goes to see her and says thank you for like watching over Jules all this time. But then he also says, "Are you the one responsible for getting the tape on her?" And he's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, why did you do it? Why did you allow us or create a way that we can have sort of a false hope?" And she says, like, "Well, I did this for Jules because I know that she didn't want us to sort of to see her body on this side of the hill. Like, I want to give her enough time to get on the other side of the hill that whatever happens over there happens, but we won't see it." So I did that for her, but I also did it for us so that we don't have to stare at her body day in and day out. Walker very much feels that Jules is dead while Dr. Nichols is holding out hope that his daughter is around, which is it's a good thing to have. Like your life changes drastically if you don't have tangible evidence that she's gone. And then the final shot is that we return back to Silo 17 and we see Solo has sort of taken care of Jules. Jules had a bad infection from the injury she took going under the water. So she's starting to come to. She's coming to. What I said was going to happen happened. But as she comes to, the suit that she's put together, she now has all the pieces Solo has taken and put away. So he's like, "No, the suit's fine, but I'm not going to give you the suit until you fix my water pump." So yeah, I told you he's not letting her go until she does what he needs her to do, which is a wild thing to do for somebody who has been pretty friendly up to this point. He says, like, "Look, we can argue all day, but the longer you take, the longer you can get back to your silo to give them the heads up that, hey, don't become like these guys." TikTok. So make a decision, but arguing back and forth is a mute. It just wastes time. So let's get that clock going. And that's how the episode ends. As you can tell, we don't spend any time in 17 to the very end, probably because I would imagine that the next episode is going to be all 17. Like if we got an all 18 in this one, the next one's going to be an all 17, and basically showing how she gets underwater and goes through this whole process to sort of try and attempt to fix that water pump. But yeah, good, really good episode. I've heard the sayings that this season feels slow or that they're sort of stalled. I don't get that feeling at all. Like I don't get that at all from anything that I've watched. I've enjoyed every piece. I love the back and forth, giving us half and half of an episode on this. I like this whole episode on 18. I'm pretty sure I'm going to love. I think we're going to focus on 17 on this. I like the tempo and the pace of everything that's happening so far. So I may be an anomaly. I know there are a lot of people who don't, but I've enjoyed everything that I've gotten from this season thus far. What did you guys think about this episode? What do you guys think about the season so far? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on X at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.